Today we are going to be speaking about reputation on chain and using reputation to develop DAOs further. And today we have some really amazing panelists. We have Billy, we have Yana, and we have Adrian. And I would love to let you all introduce yourselves and tell us more about your projects.
Hello, I'm Billy, aka Xerox Billy. I've been in crypto for over 10 years now, been involved with Ethereum since pretty much the beginning. Been at Consensus for 6.5 years. I'm still employed as an advisor, but in my full-time job I started something called Intuition, which is kind of I haven't come up with the one-liner yet. It's kind of like a sustainable yield farm for human knowledge, or like a game theoretic general purpose oracle. But basically, it's decision-making technology that tries to help us make better sense of the world, hence the name Intuition. So yeah, excited to dive in.
Hi, I'm Adrienne, or Ads. I came into Web3 through DAOs. I joined Bankless DAO. I've been active in a lot of different DAOs. The last company I was with served DAOs. So I've spent a lot of time in a lot of Discords and forums. I'm currently head of marketing at Pocket Network, where we are a decentralized infrastructure provider. So any application who wants to read or write to the blockchain goes through an intermediary called RPC. We provide RPC through a decentralized network of nodes that plug into our protocol. And we are just kind of evolving into more of an open protocol so that anybody can then provide RPC services on top of us. So they can either plug it into DAO tooling, or if they're an existing RPC provider, they can get better scaling, cost effectiveness, uptime, and the actual tangible benefits that decentralization unlocks. So that's who I am and where I am. We have a participation-based governance model that's quite cool. So I guess that's why I'm here.
Hi everyone, my name is Yana. I work at the Rari Foundation as the art strategy. Rari Foundation works together with the Rari DAO on building out infrastructure for NFT builders and creators. So if you heard of the Rarible NFT marketplace, the protocol layer is decentralized and governed by the DAO. Our DAO is new-ish. There were actually 2 attempts at building out the DAO to a successful functioning model. So now we're on DAO 2.0, and the foundation that I'm part of was established in October last year. So relatively fresh in the space as an entity, but we have a nicely engaged community.
Thank you so much. And my first question will be a more general one related to your general take on how the DAOs developed recently. So what we've seen in the space, DAOs are a very new sort of thing in the space. And at first it was all about let's decentralize all of the power and make it permissionless and make it so that anyone can just buy the token or get the token and can actively vote on anything and can earn as much power as they want. And now, as we've seen also from the talks that we had earlier today, now we're starting more moving on to, not really anyone and everyone should, but those who kind of earn the right by participating actively, those should have more power. And this is why we talk about reputation. How do you see reputation in Web3, and why do you think this is necessary for DAO governance?
I'm happy to go first. I think it's extremely necessary, and I don't think that, DAOs are kind of working right now, but I think they work a whole lot better in the presence of good reputation technology. And so right now, what you see across kind of the whole ecosystem is a lot of low reputation, but highly vocal voices who kind of cloud. There's a lot of the signal to noise ratio is kind of very off, and so it's really hard to distill the signal from the noise when you don't know the reputation of the people conversing. And you might know who they are just by interacting with them in other places, or in the forums, or in the Discords, or wherever you're interacting with them. So you might have a kind of somewhat feel of who these people are, but if you're new, you have no idea. And if those people are new, you have no idea. And so I think once we have better reputation systems, we can use it for so many things, not just like making sense of who people are and then taking maybe what they say with a grain of salt or really trusting it, but also like we can just factor it into all of our voting systems, and then like that's just super low-hanging fruit. So I think it's a precursor to having really, really, really effective DAOs.
I'll jump in with just a couple of headlines of ours. So I think it's really sad to see that most DAOs have a Gini coefficient that tends towards perfect inequality. It tends towards a 1 rather than a 0. It is worse than many of our most unequal nations. And there are some reasons for that. I'm very proud that at Pocket, our Gini coefficient is 0. We have a perfect equality. There are a few reasons for that. So we don't think permissionless means unrestricted, and we haven't. So we have a relatively small voter pool of under 100 people, and that they are active value creators within the community. So we're in a fortunate position where we don't need to monetize our token. We need to monetize our product. So we have economics that run through an actual product, service or a product DAO. The token has utility within our product. Its value should coincide with that perceived utility. And therefore, we give governance to people that are adding value within that ecosystem. And you can add value as a contributor, you can add value as a citizen, you can add value as an actual builder. Most of our big product innovations have come from builders within our community. So I think, for us, like, reputation is something you accrue as you become meaningfully involved. We are about to upgrade it so that it's much more automated, so that it's more nuanced. So we're expanding into 3 kind of houses, I guess similar in a way to Optimism's, but we added an extra one, where you have 45% of the vote that will go to builders in the community, technical and non-technical. 45% of the vote will go to stakers, but it's not passive capital, it's not just token holders, it's active capital. So it's people that are staking within the ecosystem to support the node operations. And then the remaining 10% goes to citizens. So you've always got that kind of balance. Even within the staker house, we have our own version. We have like 3 groups within the staker house of people that deploy capital to LP, people that deploy capital to service, people that deploy capital to kind of stake and run a node. And we apply our own version of quadratic voting. So it's very focused on taking what we've learned over the last 3 years to try to make sure that nobody dominates, but that actually it's still a relatively small group to start with. So we have really high participation levels. So, one of the issues I saw in DAOs is that actually quite often I was guilty of voting on an ill-informed basis, based on trusting somebody that I saw leading it, or seeing that the vote was heavily in their favour and I wanted to be seen as participating. But actually the rational choice for most voters in a broad token base is apathy, because the amount of effort that's required to learn enough to take an informed decision outweighs the personal benefit to having participated in that. So for us, kind of reputation is very linked to tangible activities that can be measured. They will be automatically linked to verified credentials that will be triggered. You build up your reputation through those credentials. They degrade over time. So if you cease to be active, you will gradually lose some of that reputation, and therefore the ability to influence the outcomes for the protocol. So that's kind of how we think about it. Thank you.
So our governance is token-based. So you essentially go and buy Rari, but you can't use Rari in its raw form for participating in our DAO. You actually need to lock it. And there's a quotient. So the shorter amount of time you lock your Rari for, the less of the V-Rari token that is able to participate in governance you will get. So we actually incentivize you to lock it for a long time if you want the same, conversion between your tradable token and your locked token that is used for governance. It means when you lock it and use it for governance, you can't actively trade it. So that kind of like already disincentivizes people who would be in on the governance for like a one stint or like short amount of time. Second, you don't have to actually purchase or own your Rari to become a meaningful voice in our community. The foundation runs a delegate launchpad program. So if you're interested in contributing to this community, we will actually delegate to you for a certain amount of time to make your contributions proof that you're actually doing the work, and then attract community delegations and continue being a delegate in that way. And then 3, what we're rolling out now is delegate score. So essentially, and this is a score and formula that the delegates have worked on themselves with our consultation, with our participation, but essentially they are designing, or they have designed, and if the proposal goes through, this will be implemented in a couple of weeks. A combination of their off-chain and on-chain activity calculated as a single score that will be displayed on their delegate profiles on our website next to their tele profiles. People will be able to see their delegate score, which is reflective of their contributions and participation in the DAO, and that will help with elevating them in front of the community and being able then to attract more of those community delegations. So that's essentially how we incentivize delegation to those who actually contribute. And apart from that, there's also this delegation incentive program that is being rolled out. And the questions that the working group has been working through is, how do we prevent the creation of whales? Because in our governance, we don't have whales that would be active. We have whales when it comes to token holders, but they're not necessarily the same who then show up in governance. So our governance actually, thanks to the Launchpad program and thanks to the legacy of who has been active, has very evenly distributed voting power. So one of the questions that we were addressing, and hopefully we have addressed it well in this proposal, is not to create those whales, because it's just not in the state of governance to have 1 or 2 parties, being able to decide on majority of proposals.
Thank you so much. Actually, I want to stay a little bit more on the RariDAO program for the delegates, because we spoke briefly before this panel with Jana, and she told me something very interesting. In their program, it's, I think, 6 months, right? And in their program, they're actually not using any financial incentives, and the only incentive is basically building a reputation for these delegates. So I find that really interesting. And can you just tell the audience more about this program? I know you also are removing some of the power every week, so that is really interesting. And then I would like to hear what do you think about that?
Yeah, so it's an experiment. We're running the first iteration of the program, and the idea was being a smaller project, being a smaller DAO, we wanted to make sure that we can bring in people who don't necessarily need to buy the token, right? It shouldn't be really a prerequisite that you hold a token to be actually interested in contributing to something or seeing it flourish, right? You might have that time, you might have those ideas, but you might not have the financial means. So really the idea came from the impetus to diversify and offer broader accessibility to being a voice in our DAO. The scope was essentially if you qualify for this program, which is fairly simple, you submit an application, you tell us about yourself, you tell us about your Web3 journey, you tell us about your motivations, your social, so we can kind of get a sense of who you are. And then the delegation is the same for everyone. And then in the first 3 months, it's a 6 months long program, in the first 3 months, you have 100% of the delegation. So you just go and contribute to the DAO, you vote, you show that you're engaged, you show that you are informed when you vote on proposals and when you express your POVs and when you substantiate your feedback and so on. And in the second 3 months of the program, that delegation starts to trickle back to the foundation. So you start with approximately 2,000 Rari, and then you end with 0 at the end of those second 3 months. And in those 3 months, we as a foundation, we use our channels and our voice to say, wider community, all these delegates, look at them, they're part of this cohort, these are their scores, right? These are some of the superstars that have been really contributing, and we actually highlight these throughout the whole time, right? If there's a delegate that does something great, they raise their hand to work on a project or bring new ideas, they bring new collaborations to the DAO, then we always make sure to retweet them, to include them, give them shout outs in our community calls, in our Discord channels and so on. So throughout the whole program, they are getting attention, right? But then this is more of an institutionalized way in those last 3 months when we actually include them in the newsletters. We really give them that platform so that the wider community sees that these people have been active and have been contributing. To your point, none of this is compensated, right? So we're very honest about it up front. We say none of this is compensated, but we will really support you and we will back you up if you want to create systems for compensation, or if you want to bake in your compensation in a proposal, or any of that. But just like, it's actually the delegate's job to think about how to get compensated, right? It's decentralized, so I mean, they will have our backing if they come up with good ways of being compensated. So the current working group has pitched that delegation score and that delegation incentive program that, if passes, it will run in a couple of weeks. So I encourage them to bake in compensation in their proposal as they're submitting it. So they didn't ask for anything extraordinary, but everybody who works on it will get a nominal amount if this passes through.
Do you have a question?
I can respond.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I think that the non-economic approach is what we're going to need to increasingly take, and I think that basing reputation on number of tokens held is this like extremely reductionist thing that it's kind of absurd. It shows skin in the game, and so maybe people want to act in their own best interest and do what's best for the protocol because it's best for them, but I don't know if that's like a good indicator of reputation generally. And so I think what we need is we need portable reputation, and we need, like the reputation we say, for instance, build in your context, we need to be able to take that elsewhere. And like we need to generate reputation within each of these different contexts, but not have the reputation locked into that context, so then we can take it cross-platform. It's like, oh, like this person is highly reputable over here, maybe that has some relevance in my community. And we also need to think about the context in which there is no overlap. It's kind of this like big map, and there's concentric circles, and then there's things that like are not concentric at all. And so I think a problem that society has right now is we like conflate certain types of reputation with other types of reputation. So for instance, like right now what we're doing is conflating number of tokens held with this person is like smart within this context or will make good decisions. Outside of crypto, sometimes we take the word of like good athletes when they're talking about politics. We're like, oh, this guy's famous in sports, so he must have a good political opinion. It's like, well, maybe not, because he doesn't know anything about politics. And so reputation is just, it's entirely contextual, and it's also relative from the perspective of the observer. So someone who I know really well's reputation to me should be higher than to someone who doesn't know them. Or if someone is 6 degrees of separation away from me in a trust graph, my reputation should be lower for them than a person who is like 1 degree of separation away from me. So it's like very contextual, it's very relative. And I think we're just at the beginning, and I think we have to just keep doing experiments like this, like output these non-economic reputation scores, so that later we can leverage those in many different contexts. That was a long-winded answer, but...
No, I think the only thing I would say is I completely agree on transferability in particular. Right now we actually have a very nuanced level of, I can't remember how many credentials, but there are a ton of them. Like there's lots of different aspects that we're attempting to recognize, and this is just our expansion into that. And just how grateful I am that actually, it is relatively simple in our context, and that there are tangible actions that we can look to. And the reason that they participate is because they're very invested, not just financially, but also that their time is invested, their resources are invested, they're building, they're contributing. It's making me quite grateful for that simplicity.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree. We're at the very beginning, and it's great to see so many experiments going around. Everybody's just trying out different tools and different methods, different delegation systems, and so on. Do you have any specific hope of how combining these reputations and reputation systems, I would say, and also both the on-chain and the off-chain reputation, do you have any hopes or dreams about how this should look like in the future? Or are there any specific tools that you are proud of, or specific decisions that you are proud of from the past?
I'll give it a try. So I guess I take no credit whatsoever for our governance system because I joined the project 4 months ago, but I'm really proud of the decisions everyone in the team has made up until now. I think there's been a lot of thought and a lot of experimentation and learning that's gone into that. I think that for me, I kind of came into this space, I think you come into the space either because you're interested in the tech, you're interested in the money, or you're interested in the ideology, and I'm very much in the ideological camp. For me, it was about economic empowerment of individuals on a fairer, more meritocracy apparently was originally coined in satire. It wasn't intended to be adopted as the flag we now carry it as. But in that more equitable future in which people can earn based on meaningful reputation rather than the biases that we all carry into these. So that would be my hope, is that we can work towards that through some of these systems. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like open-ended access is really important, right? And that's what we're trying to do here. But I think like when we talk about reputation, it's interesting because you have all these like different platforms that reputation is being built on, right? You have the on-chain, the off-chain, and then like ramifies. So like really like being able to connect the dots between these, right? So like we're actually telling our delegates to like manually go and link their tally and their forum identities so that we can associate this manual, right? So I was actually talking to the tally team about this the other day, and I think there will be like enabling like that verification, right? So that you then have that one verified identity that if you're building a reputation score or something like that, you can actually use that and it simplifies the whole thing, right? So like finding ways to like link those different presences and identities so that everything compounds into that one, whether it's one-dimensional or multi-dimensional score, like however you want to like design it, right, will be really important. And then just keep broadening the access. I always found it like perplexing that so the people who like have the most, like if it's a token-based governance, right, are either ones who have the means to purchase a token, or they were like the early adopters, and everybody else is kind of like excluded for having like a big voice. And I always found that really perplexing. So continue working on like bringing those other people in, right, and enabling them to be like meaningful contributors to your DAO, I think is important.
I guess an example of what has gone right and where we're going. So I think the best example of a DAO, or the most successful one, is Ethereum itself. And so I think there's a lot of learnings to be gained from the way that Ethereum itself does decision making, and I think it's a feature and not a bug that there's no on-chain governance, and it's kind of this like soft governance that happens across all of the forums, happens across all of the social platforms. Like it's very, very nuanced, and it's hard to kind of quantify and codify that. And I think really good decisions have come as a result of not just allowing ETH token holders to vote on the direction of where Ethereum goes, juxtaposed against something like Polkadot, where like on-chain, like they have on-chain governance. I just don't, there's two sides, and I don't think that that's like maybe the way to go. And so I think we should look to Ethereum itself for inspiration a little bit more. And then where we're going is, reputation is involved in everything. It's like you're going to buy a product off of Amazon. Okay, what's the reputation of the seller? What are the reputations of the reviewers? You're hopping in an Uber. What's the reputation of this guy? You're just talking to this person for the first time, or you're trying to hire this pseudonymous actor on the internet. Who is this person? And so, like, reputation is involved in everything. So once we abstract the reputation away from the application layer and instead have like low-level protocols for reputation so that the reputation can escape the confines of the context of the application, and we have this cross-context reputation generally, then like we start generating it within these contexts through like these experiments and these DAOs and everything, and then we just bring it with us everywhere. Like I will have one trust graph that I can bring to and maybe the trust graph is different based on the context, but I go to Amazon now, and instead of just seeing 10,000 reviews from people I don't know, I overlay that with my trust graph, and it's like, oh, like Dr. Huberman says that the supplement is good, so maybe I trust this because he has high reputation in supplement land. So I think that's kind of where we're going.
Thank you so much. If you can be short, we are out of time.
Yeah, I just have one reaction to that, because there's like a part of it that I think is worth challenging and discussing, right? And at some later stage, I think. But essentially, like, right, every DAO like tackles a different challenge, right? Because like not every project is the same, not every DAO will have the same scope or the same goals or the same objectives, right? So I think like it's really nice to have the idea of like portable reputation, but maybe different DAOs will value different aspects with different ways, right? So I think like there's still like the uniqueness, because I personally would find the idea of like single score really like intimidating and daunting, right? It's like your badge for life, right? Because your contributions on one end might be very different from your contributions to the other.
Do I have time for a rebuttal? Single score equals bad. Like, we definitely don't, like, there should never be, that is the dystopian future. There should never be like one single score. It should all be, there should be like many models. You can choose any model that you want to run like over the data. It should be contextual, it should be relative. Like, please no one build like one single social credit score.
Thank you so much for this panel. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. Okay, great. Do we have a mic?
This is a question on reputation. How do you think reputation really plays out across cohorts? I think a great example is in the last bull run, when at the top, you know, there were maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe more people who would have trusted Do Kwon over Vitalik. How do we think about reputation as being like really aligned to cohorts, and how sometimes, you know, even in the sort of like trust graph, it's easy to sort of like circumnavigate it unexpectedly. And, you know, something that I tend to think about is that token weighted voting leads to plutocracy, but reputation-based voting leads to demagoguery. What are sort of the thoughts about how we deal with that?
One comment on it. I think one of the issues I have with the likes of Do Kwon is that as humans we tend to conflate confidence with competence. And we've seen that kind of throughout time. So you get these big swaggering loud voices and people follow them. Yeah. And for me, what reputation holds the promise of, and it's not there yet, is the ability to make more informed, more concrete judgments based on not one number, but a more robust set of data points that you can kind of choose between and put together the picture that is relevant in your context. And hopefully that helps us get past that kind of basic flaw in human judgment, where we are terrible judges of competence.
Really good question. I guess I got one comment, and I think that it's a problem right now is it's really easy to follow the herd, and you're not like disincentivized if you get it wrong. And so like if there's an incentive to follow the herd and you don't get punished if you get it wrong, then why not just do that and just exist in the echo chamber and keep saying things and not do your due diligence? And like I think both of the like FTX and 3 Hours Capital are just examples of people not doing any due diligence and just following the herd. And so I think that because the attention span of crypto right now, as exacerbated by the platforms through which we interact, is so short, like it doesn't matter if you like were promoting these people previously, because everyone's gonna forget and you can just delete your tweet and then it never happened. And it's like, oh yeah, like maybe some people remember, but it doesn't really matter. So I think just building different systems that allow kind of the sentiment with respect to things over time, like allowing that to persist and kind of like attaching it to individual actors, so you can see like both what people are saying about those actors and then what those actors are saying. I think it's just really important, and it's also scary because like having some immutable history of what you've said is an interesting and scary thing, and maybe not great, but I just think we need better systems to prevent that problem.
Actually, I want to add something to your answers. I was thinking now, you know, you asked about these waves and cohorts of people that come in, right? And the thing is that we're just used from Web 2 to, you know, if there's a certain actor and we want to look at him, even like this guy's named Do Kwon, we would go to Twitter, we would go to LinkedIn, like we look at people and we look at like their history and oh, they worked at this protocol and they did this and this, we basically just see titles and a lot of things that we don't exactly know that are true. And this is where the on-chain reputation building comes in. And right now we don't have this one tool that everybody goes to and watches everything you do, but we kind of have, we have like the POAPs and we have the Gitcoin passport and we have a lot of small tools. And I think that as we develop those and we start connecting people with those and we make it easier for newcomers to just, and we market those as well. We say like, hey, you can just go here and you can check what exactly this person has contributed to, what did they vote on, how did they vote, and how active are they? Because I can put on my LinkedIn that I'm at Gitcoin and Maker and Aave and everywhere, but building that reputation on chain is going to become way more important.
And just to add, like, my perspective is that the reputation is just one dimension, right? Like, I see reputation as coexisting with other factors and criteria. Like, for me and for the DAO that, like, I represent at the moment, like, the token is not going away, right? Like, I think it's important to have also those economic incentives aligned, right? Like, it's not just purely based on reputation, because at the end of the day, like, you are contributing to an ecosystem and making decisions about an ecosystem, right? That without viable financial model might also not work, right? So like having that economic incentive alignment still in place, like I think is a good thing, at least like for certain projects and certain DAOs out there, right? Like not everybody is guarding a protocol with their DAO. But yeah, just having that alignment like still in place, I think is important. Like nobody buys products just based on reputation anyway, right? Like it's a multi-dimensional thing, and reputation plays a score there, plays a role there.
Thank you very much.